You think you know men. You've read the articles, listened to the advice, maybe even been burned a few times. But what if everything you believe about the opposite sex is a carefully constructed lie designed to keep you hopeful, compliant, and ultimately heartbroken? Friedrich Nietzsche spent his life stripping away comfortable illusions to reveal harsh truths. And his observations about human nature, particularly male nature, are so brutal that most women would rather live in denial than face them. Here's what no one wants to tell you. The romantic fantasies you've been sold aren't just unrealistic. They're dangerous. They keep you vulnerable to patterns that repeat over and over, leaving you wondering why you always end up disappointed. Nietzsche understood that most people prefer beautiful lies over ugly truths. But some truths are so powerful they can set you free, even when they shatter everything you thought you knew. The reality about men isn't what Disney movies taught you. It's not what your mother hoped for you. It's not even what good men themselves want to admit. But it's what every woman needs to understand if she wants to navigate relationships without losing herself. Have you ever wondered why the same patterns keep showing up in your love life? Why promises get broken? Why behavior changes after commitment? Why you feel like you're speaking different languages? This isn't about male bashing. This is about truth. Raw, unfiltered truth that could save you years of confusion. Stay until the end. Some realities hurt before they heal. There is a force that drives all life, a fundamental energy that Nietzsche called the will to power, and it reveals something devastating about the men around you. This force is not about domination over others, but about the relentless drive to overcome oneself, to create, to become more than what you were yesterday. Yet look around and witness the tragedy of modern masculinity. Men who have confused this primal drive with the desperate need for female approval. They have traded their birthright of self-creation for the fool's gold of validation, and something ancient within you recoils from this betrayal. The man who constantly seeks your reassurance, who needs your words to feel worthy, who measures his value by your reactions, has committed the gravest sin against his own nature. He has inverted the will to power, turning it inward like a blade, using it not to forge himself into something magnificent, but to carve away pieces of his soul until only a hollow shell remains. This is why your body tenses when he asks for the 100th time if you still love him, why something primal within you screams in recognition of his spiritual death. The feminine soul can smell the absence of genuine power like a predator scents weakness. When Nietzsche spoke of power, he meant the courage to stand alone with your truth, to create meaning from the chaos of existence, to become the author of your own story rather than a character in someone else's narrative. The man who possesses this authentic power does not beg for your attention, because he is too busy building something worthy of it. He does not seek to convince you of his worth, because his actions speak with the voice of thunder, and his presence fills the room with the electricity of someone who has conquered himself. This is the man who haunts your dreams and makes other men feel like shadows. But here lies the brutal reality that cuts like a surgeon's blade through every comfortable lie we tell ourselves about modern relationships. The majority of men you encounter have never even glimpsed their own will to power, let alone learn to wield it with precision and purpose. They mistake aggression for strength, neediness for love, and emotional manipulation for depth, creating a grotesque parody of masculine energy that repels the very women they desperately want to attract. Your inability to respect these men is not cruelty, it is the voice of nature itself, demanding that only the truly powerful earn the right to your surrender. Nietzsche warned of a coming age when humanity would produce what he called the last. Man, a creature so comfortable in mediocrity that he would mistake his spiritual death for enlightenment. These are the men who surround you now, content with their small pleasures, their safe routines, their predictable lives that stretch endlessly toward a grave they will enter without ever having truly lived. They blink at you with bovine contentment. When you speak of passion, of dreams that set the soul on fire, of risks worth taking even if they destroy you, they have traded the dangerous beauty of authentic existence for the numbing comfort of perpetual safety. The last man seeks only to avoid pain, to minimize discomfort, to create a life so cushioned by convenience that he never has to face the terrifying responsibility of becoming who he truly is. He wants a relationship that functions like a warm blanket, predictable and comforting, where difficult conversations are avoided and growth is optional. This is why he feels so wrong to you, why even his touch can feel like an invasion rather than an invitation, why your body rebels against his advances even when your mind cannot articulate the reason. Your feminine essence recognizes him as spiritually neutered, a man who has chosen living death over the beautiful agony of authentic existence. These men speak endlessly of their feelings, their needs, their comfort zones, their boundaries, turning every interaction into a therapy session where they are both patient and victim. They have mistaken emotional incontinence for sensitivity, weakness for vulnerability, stagnation for stability. They offer you a life of pleasant numbness, where passion is dangerous, where intensity is toxic, where the very forces that make existence worth living are labeled as problems to be solved rather than mysteries to be embraced. Your soul withers in their presence because they are offering you a slow suicide disguised as love. The last man believes he is evolved, progressive, enlightened, but he is simply afraid. Afraid of his own power, afraid of your power, afraid of the wild forces that move between man and woman when both are fully alive and dangerous to each other. He wants to domesticate the lightning, to make love safe and passion manageable, to turn the sacred dance between masculine and feminine into a business transaction where everyone gets what they want without risking anything that matters. This is why he feels like death to you, because he is offering you death while calling it life, and some ancient wisdom within you refuses to accept this counterfeit existence. Nietzsche revealed one of the most devastating truths about human nature when he distinguished between master and slave morality, and nowhere is this distinction more brutally apparent than in how men approach relationships with women. The man with master morality creates his own values, defines his own worth, and moves through the world with the quiet confidence of someone who needs no external validation to know his place in the universe. He does not seek your approval, because he has already approved of himself. He does not beg for your love, because he overflows with self-love. He does not chase you, because he is too busy becoming someone worth being chased. This is the man who makes your heart race with a single glance. The man trapped in slave morality has inverted all values, measuring his worth by how others see him, defining good and evil by what gains him acceptance rather than what serves his highest nature. He has made you his God, your opinion his scripture, your moods his weather, and in doing so he has committed the ultimate betrayal of masculine essence. When he tells you that you are his everything, he is confessing his own nothingness. When he says he cannot live without you, he is revealing that he was never truly alive to begin with. Your feminine soul recoils from this spiritual poverty because it recognizes the stench of a man who has abandoned his throne to grovel at your feet. The slave seeks to make you responsible for his happiness, his sense of purpose, his very reason for existing, turning love into a burden so heavy that even the strongest woman will eventually collapse under its weight. He speaks the language of sacrifice, but practices the art of manipulation, using his weakness as a weapon, his neediness as a chain, his emotional instability as a way to control your movements and monopolize your energy. This is why his declarations of love feel like threats, why his devotion feels like imprisonment, why his presence in your life begins to feel like slow suffocation rather than the breath of life itself. The master creates, the slave reacts, and this fundamental difference shapes every moment of romantic interaction between them and the women they encounter. The master makes his own meaning and invites you to join him in creating something beautiful. The slave demands that you become his meaning and resents you when you inevitably fail to fill the void within his soul. The master loves from abundance. The slave loves from lack. And your deepest feminine instincts can distinguish between these two energies with the precision of a bloodhound detecting the scent of prey. This is why you find yourself drawn to men who seem slightly dangerous, slightly unreachable, slightly indifferent to your charms, because they carry the unmistakable signature of masters who have not yet bowed to the tyranny of needing anyone else to complete them. When Nietzsche proclaimed that God was dead, he was not celebrating, but delivering a funeral oration for the cosmic order that once gave men their sense of purpose, direction, and responsibility. In the absence of divine command, in the vacuum left by collapsed traditions, modern men have become spiritual orphans, wandering through existence without a compass, without a mission, without the terrible and beautiful burden of knowing what they are meant to become. This is the source of the profound emptiness you sense in so many men, the hollow echo where once there lived a soul connected to something greater than his own immediate desires and fears. Without the scaffolding of transcendent meaning, men have reduced themselves to consumers of pleasure, collectors of experiences, addicts of validation who mistake the temporary high of female attention for the deep satisfaction that comes from serving a purpose worthy of sacrifice. They have replaced the divine masculine archetype with the pathetic modern substitute of the man who exists primarily to be liked, to be comfortable, to avoid difficulty, to maintain the illusion that life should be easy and relationships should require no transformation of the self. Your feminine essence recognizes this spiritual poverty and rebels against it with every fiber of your being. The death of traditional frameworks has left men without the initiatory experiences that once forged boys into warriors, lovers, protectors, creators, men who understood that their value was measured not by how they felt, but by what they built, not by their comfort, but by their courage, not by their safety, but by their willingness to face danger in service of something sacred. Modern men have inherited the luxury of unprecedented freedom, but lack the wisdom to use it, the strength to bear it, the vision to transform it into something magnificent rather than something merely pleasant. This is why the men who still carry the ancient fire within them seem so magnetic, so dangerous, so irresistibly attractive, despite their flaws and rough edges. They have not waited for society to give them permission to be powerful. They have not sought committee approval for their dreams. They have not asked the world to validate their right to take up space and demand excellence from themselves and others. They carry within themselves the memory of what masculine energy was meant to be before it was domesticated, neutered, and turned into an apologetic shadow of its former self. In their presence, you remember what it feels like to be a woman in the presence of a man, rather than a therapist in the presence of a patient, a mother in the presence of a child, a manager in the presence of an employee who refuses to take responsibility for his own life. Nietzsche posed the most terrifying question a man can face when he asked what would happen if you had to live your exact same life over and over again for eternity. Every moment repeated infinitely, every choice, echoing through endless cycles of existence. This thought experiment reveals the ultimate test of masculine authenticity, separating the men who create themselves with intention from those who drift through life as victims of circumstance, biology, and social conditioning. The man who can Embrace eternal recurrence is the man who has taken full responsibility for becoming someone worthy of infinite repetition, while the man who recoils from this prospect has confessed that his life is not worth living even once. Look at the men around you through this lens and witness the devastating truth about why so few of them ignite genuine desire within you. They are living lives they would not choose to repeat, trapped in patterns of mediocrity, self-pity, and spiritual laziness that they secretly despise but lack the courage to transform. They blame their parents, their circumstances, their genetics, their society, anyone and anything except the one person who holds the power to recreate them from the ground up. When you sense their fundamental dissatisfaction with themselves, when you feel their resentment toward their own existence, your feminine wisdom recognizes them as men who have failed the test of self-creation. The man who passes through the fire of eternal recurrence emerges as his own masterpiece. Every habit consciously chosen, every value deliberately cultivated, every aspect of his character forged in the furnace of relentless self-examination and improvement. He does not ask you to accept him as he is, because he is constantly becoming more than he was, not seeking your validation, but your witness to his ongoing transformation. This is why such men seem to glow with an inner light, why their presence feels electric, why even their silence carries more weight than other men's words. The tragic reality is that most men will live and die without ever truly choosing themselves, without ever taking the sculptor's chisel to the raw stone of their potential and creating something magnificent from the chaos of their inherited nature. They will remain prisoners of their conditioning, slaves to their impulses, victims of their circumstances, offering you nothing but the bitter fruit of a life unlived and a soul unclaimed. Your inability to love such men is not failure, but wisdom, not cruelty, but clarity, because your deepest feminine nature knows that authentic love can only flow toward a man who has first learned to love the version of himself he is actively creating through the sacred work of conscious self-transformation. Nietzsche's vision of the Übermensch was not about physical superiority or social domination, but about the man who has transcended the need for external authorities to define his worth, who creates his own values from the raw materials of existence, who stands beyond the petty moralities of the masses and forges his own path through the wilderness of modern life. This is the man who haunts your dreams and ruins you for all others, not because he is perfect, but because he is authentically powerful. Not because he has no flaws, but because he owns them completely, transforms them into strengths, and uses even his darkness as fuel for his becoming. The Übermensch in relationships is the man who does not need you to complete him, because he has already completed the work of becoming himself, who does not seek your validation because he validates himself through his actions and achievements, who does not beg for your love because he radiates the kind of self-love that makes others want to bask in its warmth. He is dangerous precisely because he is not desperate, magnetic because he is not needy, irresistible because he could walk away from you tomorrow and still maintain his sense of identity and purpose. This terrifies and thrills you simultaneously, because you recognize him as your equal in power. When such a man chooses you, it is not from weakness, but from strength, not from lack, but from abundance, not because he needs you, but because he wants you. And there is a universe of difference between these two motivations that your feminine soul can detect with microscopic precision. His attention feels like a gift rather than a burden, his love like an adventure rather than a prison, his presence like an invitation to become more rather than a demand to become less. He challenges you to match his energy, to meet him at his level, to become worthy of the intensity he brings to everything he touches. The modern dating landscape is littered with the wreckage of men who mistake arrogance for confidence, aggression for strength, emotional unavailability for mysterious depth. But the true Übermensch transcends these crude imitations through the simple expedient of being genuinely self-created rather than socially manufactured. He does not follow dating advice or manipulation tactics because he has learned to trust his own instincts. He does not play games because his authentic self is more interesting than any performance. He does not seek to control you because he has mastered the only person he can truly control. In his presence, you do not feel the need to guard yourself because you sense that he guards himself so well that he has energy left over to protect what matters to him, including you. Nietzsche understood that conventional morality often serves as a cage that prevents human beings from accessing their deepest truths, and nowhere is this more evident than in the realm of sexual attraction, where women find themselves drawn to men who operate outside the boundaries of socially acceptable behavior. The man who transcends good and evil in Nietzschean terms is not immoral, but amoral, creating his own ethical framework based on power, beauty, strength, and authenticity, rather than the crowd-pleasing virtues that society demands but secretly despises. This is why the bad boy captivates you while the nice guy repels you, why danger excites you while safety bores you, why you crave the man who makes his own rules rather than the one who follows everyone else's. The man beyond good and evil does not seek your approval for his desires, does not apologize for his nature, does not pretend to be something he is not in order to gain social acceptance or female validation. He embraces his shadow, integrates his darkness, and presents himself as a complete human being rather than a sanitized version designed to offend no one and inspire no one. When he wants you, he pursues you with the focused intensity of a predator. When he loses interest, he withdraws without explanation or apology. When he commits, he does so from choice rather than obligation. And this unpredictability keeps you in a state of delicious uncertainty that conventional relationships can never provide. Society teaches men to suppress their primal instincts, to domesticate their wildness, to transform themselves into harmless creatures who pose no threat to anyone and therefore offer no protection to anyone. But the man who has moved beyond these artificial constraints retains access to the full spectrum of masculine energy. He can be gentle without being weak, kind without being naive, loving without being possessive, committed without being caged, and this integration of light and shadow creates a magnetic field that draws women like iron filings to a magnet. You sense in him the presence of untamed nature, the danger that makes safety meaningful, the wildness that makes domesticity a choice rather than a default. The tragedy of modern masculinity is that most men have been convinced that goodness means the absence of badness rather than the conscious choice to channel their darker energies toward creative rather than destructive ends. They have neutered themselves in pursuit of social approval, created personas so bland and inoffensive that they inspire neither love nor hate, neither desire nor disgust, neither respect nor contempt, but only the grey indifference that is the enemy of passion. The man beyond good and evil understands that to be truly good, one must first have the capacity for evil. To be truly gentle, one must first possess the power to be violent. To be truly loving, one must first be dangerous enough that your love becomes a choice rather than a given. Nietzsche warned that when you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you, and for the modern man, this abyss is the terrifying recognition of his own mediocrity, his own weakness, his own failure. To become anything worthy of genuine respect or desire, most men spend their entire lives running from this confrontation, building elaborate defenses of rationalization and blame, surrounding themselves with people who will confirm their delusions rather than challenge their growth, choosing comfort over truth, because truth demands transformation, and transformation requires the death of who you used to be. This is why they feel so inauthentic to you, because they are living lies, and your feminine intuition can smell deception like a shark smells blood in the water. The man who has the courage to stare into his own abyss, to face the brutal reality of his limitations, his fears, his self-deceptions, and his wasted potential, emerges from this encounter fundamentally changed, forged in the fire of honest self-assessment and purified by the acid of genuine self-knowledge. He no longer needs to pretend he is something he is not, because he has done the work of becoming something he can be proud of. He no longer fears your judgment, because he has already judged himself more harshly than you ever could. He no longer seeks your validation, because he has earned his own. This process is so painful that most men will choose a lifetime of quiet desperation, rather than undergo the surgery required to remove the cancer of self-deception from their souls. When you encounter a man who has survived his own abyss, you recognize him immediately by the quality of his presence, the depth of his gaze, the weight of his words, the certainty of his movements through the world. He carries within himself the scars of genuine battle, not with external enemies, but with the demons that live within every human heart, and his victory over these internal forces grants him a power that cannot be faked, borrowed, or stolen. He does not fear your darkness because he has made peace with his own. He does not run from conflict because he has learned that some things are worth fighting for. He does not avoid difficulty because he has discovered that ease without struggle is meaningless. The abyss teaches the ultimate lesson that separates boys from men, victims from victors, followers from leaders, and this lesson is devastatingly simple, yet almost impossible to implement. You must take complete responsibility for everything you are and everything you are not. You must stop waiting for permission to become powerful. You must cease blaming others for your failures and start claiming credit for your victories. You must transform every excuse into an opportunity and every weakness into a project for development. The man who learns this lesson becomes dangerous in the most beautiful way possible, not because he will hurt you, but because he has the power to awaken you to your own untapped potential, to challenge you to match his energy, to invite you into a dance of mutual becoming that most people never experience, because they never develop the courage to face their own abyss and emerge victorious. If this truth has shattered something within you, if you recognize yourself in these words, if you feel the weight of your own mediocrity crushing your spirit, then you stand at the crossroads that separates the men who transform from those who merely exist. The abyss of your own potential is calling, and you have two choices: face it with courage or spend the rest of your life wondering what you could have become. Subscribe if you are ready to stop making excuses and start making yourself into someone worthy of the love you claim to deserve. The journey beyond good and evil, beyond weakness and excuses, beyond the comfortable lies that keep you small, begins with a simple decision to become more than you are today. Click that subscribe button if you have the courage to discover what lies on the other side of your own transformation.